Hi, my name is Douglas Dresser, and I'm a supervising location manager, and I was nominated for Best Period Film for Little Women.
Hi, my name is David Lyons. I'm the location manager from Dolemite is my name.
Hi, I'm Russell Hadai, and I was the supervising key assistant location manager on the film Dolemite is my name.
Hi, I'm Markus Bensch. I was supervising location manager on A Hidden Life.
Snappy Oliver. I was key assistant location manager on Little Women.
Hi, I'm Emma Pill. I was the supervising location manager on 1917.
Hi, I'm Jan, and I was location manager on JoJo Rabbit. Nice to meet you.
My name is Rick Schuler. I was a supervising location manager on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
3, 2, 1. Hello, and thank you for watching. I am Mabel Kong, and we are here today talking to our LMGI 2020 award nominees for period features. We received over 250 award submissions this award year. To be eligible for a period feature nomination, the film must portray a time period at least 20 years prior or at least 10 years after the current award year. Today, we travel back in time, bringing these time periods to the big screen. Wow, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get right to it. Hello, Jen Adler, location manager for JoJo Rabbit. How are you and where are you zooming in from today?
Hi, I'm great, and I'm happy to talk to you. Yes, go ahead.
Oh yeah, well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having you here. Yeah.
So in JoJo Rabbit, were you surprised that the director envisioned Nazi Germany in such a colorful, stylized way?
Well, to be honest, I was truly surprised when I first got the script to read. Well, my first initial job was to find at least some locations, but this was something I couldn't really imagine how it would look like. So I was surprised. The script was nothing I would expect to be at the end. So having Taika here as a director in our country was something completely different. And during the process of choosing locations, I realized this is something else. It's gonna be great fun, and the picture is amazing.
Well, that's great. So you, like many of your fellow nominees, have had a fascinating career spanning TV and film productions. For example, in 2006, you were credited to working on both The Omen and Casino Royale. So do you consider yourself a specialist for filming in your region?
Well, specialist, as many professionals here, I couldn't call myself specialist, but yes, I feel honored to be part of this unique pictures, and especially here in Central Europe, it's my advantage to have such a location spanning from medieval times, like castles, to have a modern building here in Czech Republic in the Central Europe. So yes, I'm able to cover all these things here in Europe. So yes, answer is yes.
How would you describe your locations as to how they are unique and different from other parts of the world?
Well, they're unique in terms of our country is very small and compound. So you can reach from central Prague to the border within 2 hours. And you can find nature and urban style in many regions, very different, from medievals, as I said, from medievals to, let's say, Renaissance, Baroque style, to a wildlife area. So I would say it's easy to combine those things. And if you do a recce, you can easily get 20 different locations in a whole day.
So what country did you shoot this?
We shot Germany here in Czech Republic. And the reason why is there was a huge German population who lived here before World War II that's been unfortunately moved out after the World War II. So their heritage and the architectural styles is still here, visible in our towns. So it was kind of easy to locate it here in Czech Republic. So especially in a border region, there is this kind of architecture that's been shown in the picture. In the main location, Žatec is based as a German town, and it used to be a German town. So it's part of the story, as you can see it.
Okay. What like filming incentives are there in that region?
Sorry, I misunderstood that.
Oh, say, so are there like filming incentives like with using that location?
Well, there are many film-friendly locations like in like border regions that can be used for filmmaking. So I would just recommend to see and visit. I mean, that's what I can tell.
Well, thank you so much for sharing about your expertise and in your project with us.
Thank you for asking. Thanks. And I feel truly honored to be nominated. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Well, hello, Rick Schuler, location manager for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Welcome. How are you and where are you today?
Hi, I'm well. It's Sunday morning, and for me, it's 10 in the morning, so that's actually kind of nice. I think for some of the rest of you, it may not be. It may be earlier or later. I'm not sure. I am zooming from Colorado, Denver, Colorado. I've kind of moved away from the fires of California and waiting for work to kind of come back. So it's been a nice place to be.
Oh, nice. I took a brief trip to there. Well, thank you for being here. Your co-nominee, Steve Maple, is not able to attend, but we definitely send him our best regards.
Yes, I was trying very hard to get him on this, but this is not his kind of thing, and he had something else planned. So.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Well, how did you manage to recreate a Hollywood Boulevard, an area, right, that has been almost completely gentrified?
We basically, we kind of looked at all of Hollywood Boulevard, from Highland Avenue to, I think, Gower, which is a long stretch. But one of the anchors was Musso and Frank's restaurant. So we had a drive-up shot to that was great, and it showed a lot of what we had done there that didn't make it into the movie. And then from there, we decided we'd concentrate on that block, or that block and a half, because there was some interesting architecture there. Some of the stuff was still there. Some of the stuff we had to really take down their facades. And that was a lot of work, and we put up some structural facades. And we did that for 4 weeks, starting at 4 in the morning until 9 in the morning to avoid rush hour, with cranes and condors and that kind of thing. So essentially that was the work of it. Then we came back and did another section of Hollywood Boulevard for nighttime and concentrated on the east side of the boulevard because there were more marquees with neon lights and that kind of thing. But the process involved talking with the city, the council office, Department of Transportation, a whole bunch of people. One interesting story that I've said numerous times, so everybody has heard of it, is that we had a meeting we had to do with all the stakeholders, as they're called, for Hollywood, including the Hollywood Bowl and so forth. And I had asked Quentin Tarantino to kind of come with and be there and make a presentation if it was needed, because he had asked at one point. We were just walking, he's like, is there anything I can do? And I'm like, actually, now that you ask, yes. So I didn't tell anybody he was coming. So at the end of my spiel of presentation, I kind of said, well, there's somebody else I'd really like to say a couple words, about why he'd really like to do this. So I brought Quentin Tarantino in, and that was a lot of fun. They couldn't believe it. And he made a great presentation. And he had said, what do you want me to say? And I'm like, your enthusiasm for this project will sell the project. So I'll give you no notes, just go in, say what you want to say. And it was pretty unanimous after that they were willing to let us do what we wanted to do, though there was a whole list of, conditions that we had to follow.
Oh, that's great. Well, speaking of Tarantino, you've stated in interviews that you used to watch old films, right, at his place to inspire the looks that he wanted for the film. Like, were there any specific iconic locations he called out that were a must for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? I think you mentioned.
They were written into the script, like Musso and Frank's and some of the restaurants, Casa Vega and some other ones. He wanted the Playboy Mansion. It had been sold to a billionaire. So I didn't think that we would get that, but I managed to kind of call and get a hold of him after I got a hold of all of his different people tracking him down, because billionaires like to hide, so he was pretty hidden. But I basically said I was calling from Quentin Tarantino's office and he'd like to speak with him about using the mansion. And the response was good from Darren, the owner, Metropolis. And so they talked on the phone once, and then he let us come out and take a look at the mansion and so forth. And then we worked out a deal, and he then let us use the mansion while it was under renovation and so forth. So that was pretty amazing that we got that.
Yeah, it's good. Well, any films you have not seen and was particularly enjoyable?
Oh, you mean in terms of, I meant to address, yeah. So Quentin did this thing I'd never experienced before, which is he owns a movie theater in Hollywood, and he's renovating it, and he shows movies, and all his movies are film. So we were shooting film and not digital. And every Sunday afternoon, I think we did this 5 or 6 times, he would show us movies of the period that he owned, of course. And then he'd offer us free beer and free popcorn. So just the fun of going in and grabbing food and beer. I know it's not that much, but just you don't have to pay for it, and you go in, you sit down. And he had camping chairs in there because they'd taken all the seats out with couches. So sort of this interesting kind of quirky thing, just like him. And yeah, there were 2 movies that I remember seeing that it helped inform things. One was called Alex in Wonderland. It was a Don Sutherland movie, kind of bizarre kind of movie, but there was a big scene where he ends up shooting a movie as a director-producer on Hollywood Boulevard in front of Musso and Frank's with tanks and machine gun fire and all kinds of things. So that was interesting to kind of just sort of see the period and what was there and what wasn't there. And then another movie was called The Model Shop, which was basically a guy, when we were all done, we looked at each other and said, this is just about a guy that's running his errands all day. It was somebody driving around Hollywood for the whole movie. And I kind of wondered how it gave us sort of ideas, and we could see sort of what Hollywood looked like. There was a Sunset Strip kind of shots, which was like great, but we're never going to recreate that because it's too gentrified. So we were kind of wondering, well, why are we seeing this movie? And then it was only later after filming the movie that I realized that we did so many driving shots in the movie, so that he was taking that kind of concept of a lot of driving shots from The Model Shop, and he kind of did that with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And those were difficult but fun kind of things to do, the driving shots from some freeways that nobody would ever close down that we managed to be able to do and stuff like that.
That's great. So you are LA based, and many of your past projects, for example, Fight Club, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Her, Chips, A Star is Born, like all LA centric. Like, how did you grow your LA location library to offer such diverse looks?
Driving, driving. And then we got, Google Maps and that kind of thing. So that's pretty much it, is driving around. And I learned on early to just think, like, if you spend, a good portion looking for this location, it does end up being the location that you want for this project. It's like, okay, but that could be the next project. So it was a lot of that, just kind of looking and driving and becoming very familiar with it. And before the riots, we kind of knew where everything was. And then after the riots, it kind of stayed the same. And then recently, it's so gentrified, I can go down every week and not recognize a corner now. So it's like starting all over. except that I don't want to start all over. I'm going to let the young ones like Snappy take over and kind of run with it now. So that, yeah, that was basically it, just getting to know. Some people sort of said like, oh, well, you know, you're scouting the same thing all the time, but that was sort of the challenge that I liked, was like, okay, where can I go and find something we haven't seen before? And there have been some projects where we kind of go and find things that haven't been done before. But after a while, yes, you are going back to some of the same locations. But I'd never been back in time to 1969, and certainly not on Hollywood Boulevard.
That's a good point. Well, we had several questions for Mr. Maple, and just had to sneak one more in while we have you. So what was it like while you were filming in Hollywood Boulevard for 2 weeks in July?
We shot there in July. It was 2 days of filming, but it was like 6 weeks of prep. And then we came back in October and did the nighttime stuff. How was it? It was interesting. I mean, the first thing they had said is like, okay, you can do this, but you can't do it in July, and because that's the tourism month. And I don't know if you know Hollywood Boulevard, it's nuts. So of course that's when we wanted to do it. So we had to get over that hurdle. And then at the time the World Cup was happening in, I think, St. Petersburg, Russia, which I was like, well, that's so far away. Why would that affect us? Well, all the tourists were there. And because of the time frame, all the bars were opening up at 8 in the morning so that people could watch the World Cup. So that was an additional thing that I could have never imagined that would be something we had to contend with. But it worked out fine. The fun thing, I think, was that I'm talking to Ukrainians and Russians and Germans and you know, people from Portugal and so forth, and they're like watching a World Cup thing, and at the same time they're watching a movie being made with Brad Pitt and Leo DiCaprio just driving right in front of them. And they're thinking like, well, yeah, we're in Hollywood. That's what should be happening. So the fun part of it was like, little did they know that this was a once in a lifetime kind of thing. But they were kind of like, yeah, this is it. Yeah, look, there they go, and so forth. So that was a lot of fun. And it was fun to talk with people from around the world too. Because I don't find Hollywood to be that attractive. So it was interesting to talk to them about why they were here and all that kind of stuff. So it was great to be able to have them see a movie being made with some major stars that they recognized.
Okay. Yeah, actually, one of my questions was any funny stories of fans or tourists for us. If you want to, was it that or other stories?
I can't think of anything right now.
Or how did you handle the crowds, right? Or were they just giving up?
Yeah, well, I had talked to Quentin about this, and it actually worked out for us, and it doesn't always. But on certain scenes, we were able to just look on the north side of the street and concentrate on that, and then we'd reverse it and look at the south side of the street. So we put up barricades or bicycle racks like they would at an event. And I told them that we have to let the crowds come. So we had huge crowds that were there. And I learned that Quentin is very good with crowds. He'd have crowds out there. He would talk with them and have the banter back and forth. And they'd say, okay, now I got to go to work. So I need you to be quiet. And we're going to film for an hour and a half. And 1,500 people would be quiet and wait for an hour and a half. You know, so it was like pretty amazing that way. A couple of times we've had people rush him to kind of just come and hug him or touch him or who knows what. But that's how we dealt with the crowds for the most part. So we allowed for them to watch at a certain level, and then when we needed to get there, then we sort of push them aside. He was good about that. I don't know if he signed any autographs. I don't think we let people get that close to do that. So in that case, no. But yeah, that's how we handled those crowds.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us, and also on behalf of Mr. Maple.
Yeah.
Hope you have a great day.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm honored to be with all the other people here. These are amazing location people and amazing projects.
Yes, they are. Well, hello, Miss Emma Pill. How are you and where are you calling from today?
Hi, I'm in England. I'm in the Chilterns, which is just about an hour west of London. So, in my garden.
Oh, lovely. I know, I can see it. Oh my gosh, I wish I was there right now. Well, we sincerely appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
In 1917, like how do the locations work into the director's notion of having the story told in one continuous shot?
Wow. When I first got the script, Sam never actually told us it was going to be one continuous shot. It was just written in small typeface on the front of the script. This is going to be shot in one continuous shot. And you're like reading the script going, oh Christ, how am I going to do this? I think we did a big plan to begin with of their journey, like almost an ordnance survey map of where they were going from A to B. And then we needed to find the looks in each section. We headed off to France to look at the real places these battles took place to get an idea of the landscape. And northern France was just beautifully rolling countryside. Obviously, we're over 100 years on now, and so trees and villages have been rebuilt, but it gave us a good idea of what the landscapes were going to be like. So you had to put out of your mind the normal way one scouts. I don't know if these guys will know this, but you're asked to find a particular location and you go out and you find it and you take good angles from certain shots, a nice establisher. But as a scout for this show, you had to scout as if you were the person walking through the landscape. Sam wanted, and the designer Dennis, and Roger, they wanted to see the journey through. So, and it was all based on script as well. So the locations had to be big enough. The actors never stopped moving. So it had to be big enough to go from A to B, finish that scene, but connect the next location visually. So for light, if you were going up a hill, the next location, you need to be on a brow of a hill to come down a hill. So, and think of compass direction and where the light was going to be on the day. So they were all very, very connected. That was the hardest, and the expanse of the locations. And also, 100 years ago, we didn't have the intensive farming that we have nowadays. So we had to find landscapes that were beautiful meadows, and there's not a huge amount of CG in 1917. So, and big landscapes with no trees. So we started close to London, as most productions are based there, and we did our search out, but most of the sort of landscapes around London, which are in travelable distance without staying in a hotel, are sort of smaller fields around trees and agriculture and crops. So we got our search a bit further out, and we ended up, majority of our locations was down in Wiltshire, on a place called Salisbury Plain, which is a military training site. So, and it, of course, being a military training site, it hasn't really been touched from farming. So you have these big expanses. So that's how we sort of started. And then there was sort of specifics, like to find the canal, and British canals are tiny. I don't know if you know our little narrow boats that go down these little canals, and French canals are massive. So we had to try and find what could we double canals for. So we started looking at old dry docks that have been flooded, where they used to, repair ships. And we found one in Glasgow for that. It was tidal because the gates are broken. So we had to fix all the holes to make sure the water level stayed the same, because canals don't go up and down. So yeah, it was really interesting. Sam had a very specific vision. I mean, it was based around his family, his grandfather. I think he even gave me the picture of the canal, a reference picture from the First World War that he wanted me to find. So it was the continuation. That was the hardest, to be one location into the next, where you didn't think you were cutting to different places around the UK.
Okay. Wow, you mentioned all those different places. How did weather affect your shoot?
Well, that was the thing. Weather was the big one. Because it all takes place in a single period of time, and we wanted an overcast feel. So day one, we didn't shoot anything. It was too sunny. So we rehearsed and we rehearsed and we rehearsed. And then day 2, we got that one of the scenes in the trenches. We knew that the schedule was going to be fluid like that. So all our locations had to be ready so far in advance. I mean, I've never had, I think all my locations across the country were all prepped and ready at the start of the movie, pretty much. We were rehearsing 3 months, 4 months before we even got to the shoot, with crew, with cast on the locations. So we had actors and the boys walking through these landscapes, and we'd be marking them all out. So we knew the weather was going to affect us, so we had to be sort of flexible how we moved around the locations. But yeah, there were days where we had like lovely white fluffy clouds. It's like, there's a cloud coming, quick, get ready. And then there's a day it's overcast and we could shoot all day. And then there was just days of sun where it's like, yeah. We had weather cover. Ironically, you know, you normally have that for when it rains and you run to a set if the weather's too poor. We had it for sunny days. So we had a few barns because we were away from London. We couldn't use any stage, well, many stages. And we'd set up sets within old barns and put soundproofing on them and black draped them and built these sets within these barns. So if we got a sunny day on Salisbury Plain, we're like, wait, we're off to Elmore's dugout in this barn in the middle of nowhere. So weather was a big one. And rain caused us lots of problems with river levels, because obviously our whole river sequence was up in County Durham. And if we had 3 or 4 days of torrential rain in the area, it would take a couple of days and it would affect our river big time. It would raise up 2 meters, drop back down 2 meters. And I don't know if there's one shot where George is swimming, but the camera's actually on a platform in the river that we built. So we've got the cameraman walking along by the side of him swimming. And it's only about that far off the surface. And this one day we thought this big storm came through and we thought, oh my God, it's gone. And luckily when the water level came back down, it was still there. But so yeah, it was, weather was, I've got so many weather apps on my phone. It's like, what does this one say? What does that one say? So yeah, we had to check the weather all the time.
Okay. Well, at the PGA nominee brunch panel, right back when we could meet in person, your producer Pippa Harris actually spoke extensively about the importance of locations to the success of this film. Can you tell us more about the process you use to bring these locations to the big screen? I think I heard you mention that.
Yeah, they were long-standing locations because of the builds. I mean, the trenches. We had to deal with lots of different specialists. We dug everything. We dug over 1 mile of trenches. And of course, some was on an airfield where we had to check for utilities, you do all the scanning. Some of the trenches were down in Salisbury Plain where we had to check for archaeology because we were very close to Stonehenge, a few miles away, but that whole area, we had to check for ordnance, being military old training ground for over the last 100 years. Every location pretty much required temporary planning permission, where you put it out to the councils and all different organizations. From ecology, we had these areas being of natural beauty. They have some specialist flora and fauna that you had to consider, from special birds that are quite rare to all sorts, different grasses. And we had to make sure, even though it was a military training ground, it's still protected. So we couldn't just come in and destroy it. And we had to make sure it all went back afterwards. So we had a long lead-in process on all of our locations, and big infrastructure everywhere, because we were quite remote wherever we were. So you imagine you're bringing in a crew into these big landscape locations where there's really nothing around us. 360, we had to put up all the infrastructure for construction, for props, and bring in cabins, and they were long prep periods. I mean, I had a team in the end there was 28 of us across the country, from County Durham to Salisbury to Bovingdon to Glasgow, all over, all building at the same time, but everyone was planning permissions. So if you looked on every county council's website, Emma Pill is a big developer because they're all under my name. So, but actually they're all temporary film sets. But
oh wow, So
And
when
everything was outside, you know, there was not, when you read the script, you're like, God, there's really not many places we can run to. This is outdoors. This is, yeah, big skies. And there was nowhere really to hide that much. So we had a few sets, but not that many.
So when scouting for locations, would you say the world was like your oyster?
Not the world. Obviously, we reference France. We and what they do over there with the. I mean, they're living memorials to the war. The museums, the cemeteries, they're all incredible. And obviously, we couldn't shoot in France because most of the landscape there, they are still, you know, it's part of World War One. There's still ordnance in the ground, etc., and people, sadly. So England, we knew we were going to shoot it here, and as soon as we proved that almost too close to London was too small in our scale, then the UK was my oyster, which was lovely. You don't often get that. So, you know, to go to Scotland just for the canal, to go to County Durham, which is up in the northeast, just for the river and the rapids. We were in Oxfordshire for the big, where they come out of the tunnel and they see the old German ammunition dump after they've gone through the German tunnels. And then we were up in Hertfordshire at an old airfield. You can imagine digging that amount of trenches is very, very muddy. So what we tried to do was find an old airfield where we could utilize the hard standing of the airfield, but use the fields and the triangles in between where the runways cross as where we dug. So we could always at least have a foot on something hard standing to not completely sink. We still sunk quite a bit and we had some floods going on. I learned a lot about soil. But yeah, no, the UK, we were very lucky. Our producers, Pippa and Sam was producer as well, and director, and Callum, they allowed us to spread our wings around the UK, which is lovely to do. You can really find some beautiful, we've abundance of landscape in this country. So I was very lucky.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, I have one more question. So have you worked with so many actors and extras in your past projects?
No, I think not that many extras. The end sequence, the 500 where he goes up over the trench and runs, that was the biggest extras count for one shot that I've done before. And of course that took a lot of planning to get them up onto the location. And obviously we'd dry rehearsed it, but we hadn't done all the scenes with we hadn't actually done a shot with all the explosions because the reset time was something like 5-6 hours. So you want to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. And the camera movements, from one side of the trench, the camera gets handed over 3 times in the same shot. I mean, I think 2 of our grips were in costume because they weren't going to get out of shot quick enough. And then when George started running and we were going for the first take, all the explosions start going off and the extras come over the ridge. They've all been told, watch out for George, watch out for George. And on the first take, I think it was the end of the day, everyone was quite tired, but the energy he put into it, and he got hit a couple of times, like he gets knocked over and rolls, and we were all like watching the monitors going, no, because like all the explosions were going off. That wasn't meant to happen. And then he gets up and he runs even faster to catch up with the tracking vehicle that had noticed and tried to slow down for him to catch up, and he gets knocked over again. So once we got that shot, everyone's like, oh, that wasn't meant to happen. But in the final cut, when I saw it, we did 2 more days of that scene. Poor George, he was exhausted. And Sam used the original one because it just brought something real to you couldn't fake that. You couldn't ask an extra to run into him and knock him over, and he just needed to get back to that camera. So working with that amount of people, and the other thing was trying to protect the landscape, trying to protect the location from crew just trampling it everywhere, because you get, I don't know if you remember the opening and the end, there's these beautiful flowing grasses and it all looks like it hasn't been trampled. Well, we got 250 crew trying to do their job. So it was looking after the locations and trying to make them still look good after months and months of crew being all over them. and a lot of extras.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing like these behind the scenes information with us. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here today.
And thank you. I'm very privileged to be here with everybody on this panel. Thank you.
Hello, Markus Bensch. How are you and where are you Zooming from today?
Hello, Mabel. I'm fine, and I'm in Berlin, Germany.
That's great. We welcome you. I haven't been there one day, but I do want to go there one day.
Please come by.
Well, congratulations on becoming a newly admitted member of the Academy of Motion Pictures and Sciences.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy about that. Even 2 months later, I'm still very happy about that. I can tell you that.
Let's take it in, soak it in. So how long did you work on A Hidden Life?
That was really a long, long process. So my whole career spans like 30 years, and about a sixth of that time I spent on A Hidden Life. So I started in 2015 working for that. So early 2015, I got the script. Then I started scouting 2015 in the early summer and summer. And then because it took some time to get the money and the funding and everything, so we actually shot it in 2016. And then because it was the Terrence Malick film and he's notorious for that, he spent about 3 years editing it. And so my final thing, which I did for A Hidden Life, was actually, which was really a great honor, being asked by Terrence Malick to sit in the German dubbing and check if the German dubbing correlates to the English stuff they did. So that was in 2019. And obviously now this whole circle comes to an end with this. I think this is the last, if anything, or the last nomination that film will ever get. So that's 5 years later in 2020. But it was really an amazing journey to do that film, and a really great honor to do that.
Thank you. So from a creative standpoint, how did this production differ from like other period pieces you've worked on in the past?
Mainly, Terrence Malick has a very, very special way of shooting things. So usually he doesn't even have a script. In this case, he had a script for the first time, I think, in about 30 years or so. I think the last one with a script he did was Badlands or Thin Red Line or whatever in the 70s. So he had a script, and so when I got that, and I read quite a lot of scripts, as everybody else will, and so usually if it's a really good script, it takes 2 to 3 hours in the first run to read a script. If it's really a bad script, it takes a couple of days to read it, because you get so exhausted, and it's so boring, and you just page after page, and after 100 pages you think, oh bloody hell, when will this ever end? And on this one, on A Hidden Life, or Radegund as it was called then, because of the town that German soul, or the Austrian farmer came from, that one was, I could read like 10 to 15 pages every day, and emotionally, because it was a true story, emotionally it was so exhausting that I stopped after 15 pages per day, 15, 20. So it took me a week to read that script, because emotionally it was really, really exhausting, and you could read it, it was real. And so after I had read it, I called there's a little museum, the Jägerstätter Museum in Austria. So I called them and asked them, because Malick wanted to shoot there as well, asked them if I could have a look at it. Basically, it's his birthplace and his little farm, so I wanted to look at it and see where he actually lived, so we could match that. So I rang that place and flew to Munich, talked to the manager lady who managed the place, and so we had a date or meeting at 12 o'clock at noon. So I flew in at 9, flew into Munich at 9, got a car to be there 3 hours later. So then at 12 o'clock, I was in Radegund, and so somehow on my navigation system, I couldn't find that place, that birthplace. So I talked to 2 people right next to the church in Radegund, and they told me, this is not the right Radegund. You've gone to the wrong place. The Radegund you want is 300 kilometers the other direction. Um, so that was my start for that film. So I rang that lady again. So told her that I would be 3 hours late. She was fine with that, and she was about 80 or so. And 3 hours later, I arrived in the real Radegon, looked at the house and thought, this might not really work because it's just it's like a place for meetings now and stuff, seminars. And so just to wrap this little story up, that old lady, I don't know if you've seen that film, that old lady, that 80-year-old Maria, who runs the museum, and she's called Maria Dammer. She was really sweet and really, really nice and understanding and everything. So I talked to her and kept in touch with her. And like 3 months later, I found out that he is actually she was one of the daughters of Franz Jägerstätter. So she was basically one of the little, I don't know if any of you have seen the film, one of the little girls in the film, that was actually Maria Dammer 80 years before. So her father was killed by the Nazis, and she still lives in that same village. So that was really touching. And things like that came up through the whole story, which was really, really close to the bone, basically.
Oh, wow. What new skill would you say you took from working on this production?
Yeah. So as I tried to explain, so Malik has a very special way of shooting.
Okay.
So basically, he always shoots against the sun. So that's his main thing. He has a very low-tech approach where basically no artificial lights, even if you shoot interiors, no artificial lights. So you always have to know which direction even your interior is facing. So, and he won't shoot at any, which is really nice for setting up unit base and stuff. So he will never shoot looking into the north. So in the morning, he would shoot east. During lunchtime, he would shoot interiors, and in the afternoon, he would shoot into the west. So you always had to know exactly where the sun was going to be. That's one thing. And the other thing is that he always does very, very, very long takes, up to 40 minutes. So because he basically wants the characters to feel what they're doing. So if you see the characters farming, they're really farming. So, and they're farming for hours, like they're not actors anymore, they're farmers who are being filmed. So that kind of stuff, that was really interesting to see.
Oh yeah, that is interesting. Did you experience any challenges gaining access to locations just based on the sensitive nature of the film?
Not on the sensitive nature of the film, but I think it's probably the same in any country, that people from the north, and in this case, I would consider myself coming up from the north, being in Berlin, going to southern Germany and southern Tyrol. So there's a different speed talking to people. Even if I really talk slowly, they still think, because they're mountain people, they're on a different pace. They always think I'm really, really aggressive and pushy. Even if I slow down and talk very, very slowly to them, what I would like to do and what we're planning to do. So that took me a couple of weeks to find that out. So basically I had a German translator, Leo, who's also nominated, Leo Baumgartner. So basically whenever we had to talk to mountain people, Leo took over, because he has the same pace. So he speaks film, but he also speaks farm. So so that was the solution to that one. And then okay. So that all the farming thing, that's where life is nice and everything is looking glorious. And then if you've seen the film, then it goes down from there. Then he's taken to different prisons and courthouse, finally getting executed.
Wow. It's incredible. I have one last question. Can you talk more about where you scouted for this film and then where it was finally shot?
Yeah. So we scouted in Austria and northern Italy for the mountain stuff. Mainly we didn't want to fall into the Sound of Music trap. So it shouldn't look too nice. It had to look like proper farming country and not some don't know, Cloud Cuckoo's Land. So it shouldn't be too nice, but then again, because it has to be like a paradise, it has to have a paradise feel to it. The mountains shouldn't be too dark. They shouldn't be recognizable. So that's why we ended actually up in a lesser known part of northern Italy, near the Dolomites, but not the really well-known Dolomites. That's what we did there. And so everybody was really friendly. And then obviously for all the prisons, we went to Germany, and those were really bleak places. Some were really old German prisons, Stasi prisons from the East German secret police. And you could feel like they were really haunted houses, really, really unpleasant to shoot in there. And then finally we came around to Berlin. That's where he got sentenced to death. And we ended up shooting in one of the courthouses, which is usually off limits for shooting, because one infamous Nazi judge passed his sentences there. But the Berlin authorities were really nice about it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us, and also from Germany. I wish you the best. Have a great day. Doug Dresser, location manager with Little Women. Your portfolio of work stretches across so many genres. Like, you were last nominated and won an LMGI award for your work on Baby Driver. Please share your thoughts as to what made Little Women stand out, and how were you approached to work on Little Women?
You know, it's interesting. It's the same producer that did Little Women and Baby Driver, and for the last few years I've been doing a lot of action movies, and it was really great to do something that was not a car chase. I was kind of getting away from car chases, and little did I know it would be almost as difficult. You had to do the same street closures. You had to control large periods of the city. In this case, was Boston, Massachusetts, and Concord, and it was challenging, but it was amazing at the same time.
Did anyone twist your arm, or was it clear that this genre was something you really wanted to pursue?
I really wanted the opportunity to work on a director-based project, and when I was called to work with the production designer Jess Goncher and the director Greta Gerwig, I was thrilled. I had really loved their previous work, and I jumped at the chance to be on this movie. It was, especially once I heard who the cast was and all the creative people involved, it was really an amazing opportunity and one of the best projects I've ever done.
With 90% of Little Women being filmed on location, what was it like, and what special care did you have to take to film so many turn-of-the-century locations?
It was challenging. A lot of the locations had never been filmed before. A lot of them had never considered it. We were working in buildings that were from some of them the 18th, 19th centuries, and it was pretty amazing that we were allowed the access that we were. We had to strip it of any modern amenity. We had to take out smoke detectors. We had to refurbish fireplaces that hadn't been used in 100 years, and using real smoke and flame in a historic building was pretty challenging. I really liked my time on Little Women, and I hope they do well tonight.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for just sharing with me and everyone else who are tuning in. Hello, Kyle Snappy Oliver. Where are you calling in from today?
So I'm calling from a little north of Hollywood, California, in a place called Santa Clarita, which is a little high desert edge of Los Angeles County.
That's great. Yeah, I have family there. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. I just have to say I'm very overwhelmed at the being in the room with such greatness. All of you are just spectacular, and I don't even know how I'm in here with you guys, but thank you for allowing me to be there.
Oh, thank you. No, I feel very honored. Thank you so much for taking time out. So excited to just hear more. So how long did you work on Little Women?
So Doug and I came in a little after they started pre-production. Another manager was on and did some of the legwork. So we came in as to take over the show because of that person leaving. So we had a little we had a little bit of a race for time to get everything together. There were the foundation of some of the locations, but for the most part, we were under the crunch to actually find most of them and to get them set up. And then I think we shot about 3 months, 2 or 3 months of filming.
Okay. Well, you, like many of our nominees, have like a very diverse body of work ranging from action, drama, comedy. How do you translate your different experiences to work for like such a specific time period piece?
I remember you asking that question earlier in our setup, and I had to think about that. I don't know if there is necessarily a process that I go through to change my mind. It's just, you put yourself in the mindset of that world, and then you just start creating from there. So whether it be a comedy or a drama, or in the future or in the past or the present, you just kind of have to put yourself in that moment and start thinking from that box.
Did you do a lot of research and study?
So I have to say, so we had the fortune of shooting this in Massachusetts, which was just, you could throw a rock and you would find history everywhere. We filmed in a town called Concord, which is where the story took place in reality. That's where Louisa May Alcott lived, and she wrote the book, and that's where she wrote the story in. And outside of our house or our bar or restaurant that we would go to was places like the battle where the shot heard around the world occurred. So it wasn't necessarily as much that we had to do research to find these things. It was more, we had to find the appropriate historic site as opposed to just any old historic site that was everywhere.
Along those lines, so were there like clear looks to achieve them?
Well, obviously, the story took place in the late 1800s. So we had to recreate some things, like the town of Concord was built up a lot, and there was a lot of modern buildings and such. So we had to find smaller towns outside of Boston that could double as the original town of Concord. And there was an area where we built a row of facades that doubled for the town. And then we used the background of the town, the existing town, for the world of Concord. So.
Have you worked in this region before? Like, can you tell us how the production was received by the locals?
So because of the book, The Little Women, it's very revered, and especially in Massachusetts, because that's where it was written and Louisa May Alcott lived. Everyone was excited and they greeted us with open arms. We did have a lot of planning and finagling to do to close down some towns and things like that for our activity, because we had to roll back the paved roads and we had to, cover them with dirt to make them look to be in the 1800s. So there was a lot of work like that to be done, but wherever we went, everyone was generous, and there were so many people that had firsthand or secondhand knowledge of Louisa May Alcott and the story, and so it was more of an educational, historic find that we got to do and to learn, I should say.
Yes. Well, speaking of learn, like, was there a new skill that you learned from working on this project?
I think that the biggest thing that I ever got out of it was an amazing history lesson, especially because I got to walk into the house where Louisa May Alcott and her family lived, and to understand that point in history. The thing that we had to deal with was a lot of the places where we filmed, or where we wanted to film, I should say, were built in the 1700s and the 1800s. So people were a lot shorter then, and you'd walk into these houses, you'd have to duck into the doorways. I'm sure everyone in Europe, all the European cities representing here today, could attest to that. Everybody was a foot shorter back then. So that is hard, because you can't go into the actual house where Louisa May Alcott lived, because it's so small as it is. But then you bring in your lights and your cameras, and there's no room. The living room is a 10 by 10 room, which was grand back in the day, but nowadays is not, and you couldn't fit in the actors, much less the equipment and the rest of the crew. So there were those things where we had to think outside the box, where a lot of the exteriors were something we could easily find, and then we had to get creative on the interiors. I have a story, and I think Doug could flesh this out more, but my favorite story of the whole experience was Doug was scouting. There was this park of these houses that were preserved, and they were scouting in this one particular house, and they really liked the look of it, and they were talking out loud about how they could film this scene in this room. And the ranger, they were saying, okay, well, we need to move this chair and this desk, and the ranger says, you can't move that chair. And they're like, but we have to. We need to move this chair because this is where we want to film it. And he said, that's where George Washington sat. You can't move this chair. And I just thought, wow, I mean, how amazing, and to firsthand experience a situation where you're in a room where someone that was so great in history actually sat in that actual chair. I mean, it was just amazing.
Wow, that's awesome. I know, hearing you and everyone else share makes me want to travel to all these places.
Yeah, no doubt. Traveling is, I'd say, the best thing you could do as a human being, to expand your mind and to realize that we're not just city centric. There's so much more to this world than your house and your neighborhood.
Hi, I'm here with Dolemite is my name, specifically with David Lyons and Russell Hedaya. So David, often coined as a phenomenon from its original airing in 1975 to being recreated in 2019. Like, to what do you attribute your version's success in portraying the 1970s blaxploitation?
Well, I was absolutely obsessed with the content material. You'd never know it by visiting my home and seeing what I have on my walls and behind me when I'm on a Zoom meeting. But I was obsessed with the movie from a young age, and I attempted to seek out every single one of the original locations, and even in some capacity acted as a technical advisor. So the look of the movie was very true to the original. But overall, it was great casting. The writers are some of my favorite writers, in my opinion, the best living writers in Hollywood today, and a fantastic crew. You don't make a movie by yourself.
Great. Can you describe the differences and what you liked or don't like shooting a feature like Dolemite versus TV series you've managed in the past? Like, the Unicorn, Palm Springs, and Community?
Well, Palm Springs was actually a feature. Actually, you might want to re-ask that because I did like 4 days on Palm Springs, and Kirkland really nailed that one.
David, can you describe the differences in like what you like or don't like shooting a feature like Dolemite versus TV series you've managed in the past, like the Unicorn, Community, and the Fosters?
If you say Unicorn, Community, and the Fosters.
Fosters, yeah, we worked on the Fosters.
But with Dolemite Is My Name, it was the most creative input I've ever had on a major motion picture, and I can't trade that experience for anything.
Are you a diehard fan of Dolemite? Like, have any good imitations to share?
It's a little hard to do imitations of characters in Dolemite because it's bordering on what I call vocal blackface. But there was no movie more important to me in my youth than Dolemite. My best friend and I used to ride our bicycles to the local Star amusement video store, and they had a wall of videos called Black Action. And for my money, that was the only section in the store. And we went through every one of them, and none of them stood out like Dolemite did. And I'd been obsessed with it ever since.
Russell, period South Central Los Angeles has been razed. How did you ever manage to like create it?
Well, I mean, working with David is really the key to most of my location scouting success for sure. David's a great person to work with. He's a great leader, and he's got a vast knowledge of everything, locations, especially Los Angeles. We looked at a lot of areas in South Central, different streets. I did a lot of driving, a lot of kind of shooting along Florence, and just kind of trying to figure out places that didn't look like they were updated. We definitely found them, but again, I really attest most of the location finding or direction to David, and in large part, that's why we're such a good team. He always has a good vision and good direction, and I'm pretty good at executing his directions. So he had a great vision. Again, this is something, a passion of his. The film's been a passion of his, before he even got into being a location manager. So he knew some of the locations, original locations, even before this film was even, thought to exist. So a lot of trying to find places that didn't have updated street lights or signs, kind of dilapidated places that with the right art direction and it could work. And we had a fantastic production designer, Clay Griffith. So, it was a team effort, but really led by David, and then just kind of executed by myself and our team. We had a great scouting team as well.
Oh, that's great. How long did you work on this film?
Probably about like 6 months. David and I were probably some of the first people hired, even before the director got on board, even before the production designer. We read the script and we started to compile different locations or areas that we thought would play well with the script. And so we kind of were able to hit the ground running once the director and production designer and everyone else joined. So that helped make our job a lot easier. And again, I attest that to David's leadership and scouting skills.
Yes, it's astounding to think of like working on 89 locations over, over 44 days, right? Have you worked on a production so heavy with locations before?
I have. I've worked on The Town when I first got my start in Boston, and there was a lot of multiple location days. I wasn't in the role that I was on Dolemite, that I was in The Town, so I was much more hands-on and had a much more leadership role. And it's a challenge. I mean, switching a location, anytime we go on location, it's basically like producing an event. you know, we handle all the logistics from parking to security to bathrooms to trash to, you know, our filming location, the permits. So multiple moves. You've got to have a great team. It all starts with leadership though, and from there it's just all about executing. It's a lot of work, a lot of stress, and one great thing about films versus television is you know what the schedule is, so you know where your hardest parts of the film are going to be, or what's going to be a tough week when a down week is. So you can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel if you're in the middle of a rough patch of some tough locations. So that always is very helpful too, especially with you know, feature films.
Well, your TV credits include Scandal and The Fosters, right? 67 episodes. And you've worked with our Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Veronique Vowell. Like, can you tell us a little bit about working with her?
Yeah, I mean, working with Veronique was very instrumental to my career. I learned so much from Veronique and the people that she surrounds herself with. She has an amazing locations team, and it was an honor to be a part of that. She is a fantastic manager. She's a great leader. And I definitely picked up a lot of things that I carry on today now in my career from working with her. It was definitely a maturation period in my career working with her, and that was a long 9 months working on Scandal with her, but I wouldn't have traded it for the world. It's made me a much better person and location scout and manager.
Well, thank you so much to you and other nominees for sharing with us today. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Be sure to register to view the LMGI's 7th Annual Awards Show on October 24th at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. To learn more about LMGI, please visit locationmanagers.org.
Bye.